EL5 is writing about replacing legacy software systems as a part of the software modernization proposition that we have at EL5. And in particular, we focus on business critical systems that need to be replaced. So there can be a variety of reasons for wanting to replace these systems, like limited or no API capabilities, running on infrastructure or with applications that are no longer supported, or maybe containing business logic that is poorly documented or maybe not understood by the current employees as much as the retiring employees. So as part of the EL5 content series about this topic, in which we explain complex topics in a simple way, hopefully, we are talking about replacing the legacy systems. And I have Kishan here. Kishan is the CTO of EL5, working on all the deep technical projects that we do. So I'm going to ask Kishan a couple of questions and he will provide some of his insights. So as when a client asks for advice on rebuilding or replacing a software system, and they want to keep their legacy data or their historical data, actually, like as a senior engineer and architect, what do you do in a case like in a question like that they want to keep the data and put it in the new system? What are your thoughts, your first ideas on that?
So if we get a question where a customer wants to keep their legacy data and their legacy systems, but also wants to build something new or transfer it to a new system while still keeping everything intact that exists, there's two ways of going about it. So either we keep everything in place in the old systems and don't touch them actually at all. We just build interfaces and layers on top of them to make sure that we are able to add value with our products without hurting existing processes or for new applications.
know
There
that
are different
things
names
are
for it,
really
but we
complex
call it
in
an
legacy
integration
systems
layer
that are very
that
integrated
facilitates
into how
communication
a
between
company
the
works,
outside
especially if they
world that
work
we want
longer
to
with.
build anew,
So
and where we want to create these new
it is then
experiences.
quite difficult
And
to make a decision to take something
not touch
and migrate it
anything
to a new
that
system and
exists,
expect
but
everything to
still
work the same
provides
way.
the data.
So in
So
that
that's
case,
the
the
easiest
one
solution is
way
to
of going
build
about it, and
something
most of
that
the times that's the
interfaces in
most
between,
efficient way
basically
because you can
the
add value pretty
foundation,
quickly.
and you don't have to change an existing business. But of course, the downside of that is that you need to maintain that old system. It needs to keep existing. The processes won't change. So everything that people still do is not going to be optimized. It will still exist and run as it has always run. The only thing that is, of course, the benefit is that you can build new digital products on top of the existing data without hurting anyone that exists in the process.
Clear. And when it comes to like phasing in and phasing out of like the old system, phasing out, and what is like the timelines that you are considering as realistic when it comes to phasing in and phasing out, or using the systems at the same time, obviously also?
So it totally depends on how ingrained in the company a system is. So if it's an example, if it's a enterprise level order management system that basically controls the entire company's order management and stocking and inventory management, it is really hard to transition from that because normally it is integrated into 1,000 different processes on the customer side as well. So what you do then is try to migrate non-critical parts piece by piece and don't touch the entire critical system until you know for sure that all these small parts that you did migrate work separate. I don't think there is a clear migration path that we can set for anyone or just as a baseline that you can say, hey, within 6 months it's done. Because right now, actually, we're on a migration project that has been running for 3 months. But the main problem is that our new system has all these capabilities and expects data to be consistent. But you might understand that data that has been created by somebody else in a legacy system might not have the same constraints. So there's a lot of gaps, there's a lot of missing data, there's a lot of inconsistencies, and that hurts the migration. It's not as straightforward as just copying it from one and putting it into another. There's a clear answer for that. There's a lot of challenges, especially when it comes to transitioning from one to the other.
And do you make like sort of a migration plan in a sense beforehand, or?
Yeah, so if we migrate, we always want to create a migration plan with, of course, a lot of assumptions. So there's a lot of caveats around that. We have to make some scenarios, a good scenario where everything is fine, and medium scenario where we have some gaps, and what happens then, and what impact it has on the timelines, and a worst case scenario where we basically have a lot of gaps, a lot of missing data, and we have to make some key decisions with the clients around that as well, just to make sure that we have these things covered when they come.
Yeah, exactly. Because I have seen you stress like the quality and of the data and the checks
Yes.
when migrating data. What yeah, what do you do like with general data quality issues? Is like, what is the best way to approach that? Do you just try to clean it, or someone from the company probably then tries to clean it, or do you also like choosing sometimes to just maybe drop the part where the quality is a bit less and then just keep on going with new data?
So if we are incur any data quality issues, there are again two ways of going about it. Either you drop everything and just don't migrate it because it's not according to what you want it to be, but normally that's not acceptable because it is used for some part of the process that needs to be happening in the future as well. So the secondary step will be to actually try to fix the data, which is a manual intervention that, you can automate it, but you first have to identify what the issues are and then what use cases there are for these issues, and then how many times they occur, and then you can make an automation. But you have to do that for every instance of missing or inconsistent data. So you can imagine that it can happen within a few hours, but it can also take months to have all these cases identified and have all these automation plans. Actually, right now in the migration that we are in, there are cases where we can infer from other data around it, around a certain missing data points, what it should have been. But there are also cases where the source data is just not available at all anymore, and we are just have to make a decision. Okay, we cannot reconstruct what was there or what was supposed to be there, and we just have to, tell the client, hey, there is no way for us to reconstruct this at all without making massive assumptions, and you have to make a choice there.
Got it. Okay, I will come back to like the automation and AI support on migrations in a later question, but coming like looking at like the systems that you come across, sometimes maybe not, well, probably not before we were born, but they can be old. Has there ever been a case like you, that you were unfamiliar with the language, not, but the structure of the data, or the database, or do you have examples from that like that, or have you ever encountered such a thing, or?
Yeah, once or twice. I mean, that normally happens when there are companies that have been running for years and it was created by a person in the company in the beginning that created something to make it work then, but they never upgraded or changed it. Normally, it is companies that work, for example, with an Access database or a database that runs locally in a computer somewhere under somebody's desk and nobody can touch it except for one person. We have encountered those cases, yes. There is, of course, no clear-cut way of fixing that. Normally, it just has to do with a lot of collaboration with the client to figure out what the ideas were, years ago to create that and how this has evolved to what it is now and what the future state needs to be. And then we create a plan around that. But yes, there have been cases where, especially longer running companies have some things in place because they're maybe not a technically savvy company, or the technology is not on their forefront of the services they offer or the product they offer. So it's has been built in a certain way in the past that, serves its purpose. But especially in nowadays when you need a lot of connectivity, those things start to break down. And that's where we come in to, fix that.
Right, right. Okay, and coming back to the what you just mentioned, also about the automation possibilities, maybe more in general, not only for like cleaning data when migrating, but also like when starting a modernization project, like having a legacy system in place in a company, they want to have like an upgrade of the system from in terms of features and UX. What do you see on like what do you use or want to maybe even build in the near future on automation where AI and or LLMs and automation automation can support the process of like rebuilding the system in a newer fashion.
So automation support for migration or migration processes is it is usable, but there first need to be identified by a human what the automation cases can be. So if you want to support your legacy data with raw automation, of course, as I said, there is an integration layer that you can build on top of it to accommodate that. But if you want to support your actual processes to get that running with automation and with AI, you first have to identify the cases that you can control and then build automations around them. So a clear example would be if you wanted to automate a database full of missing or inconsistent phone numbers, for example, or addresses, you would identify the cases which you can clean or automate transitioning that data to a better format and then teach that format to an LLM or an automation to be able to do that process for it. So you wouldn't have to do the process yourself, or you wouldn't have to write the automation, but you would need to teach the different use cases for that automation to be valid.
Got it. And like also looking at like a somewhat higher level of like not only the data migration, automation, and LLM opportunities, but if you look at, for example, you need to build like or design a new architecture probably because the old one is like not sufficient anymore, and there are all new technologies and capabilities. So would, for example, would be a possibility to feed an LLM with like the ELI5 LLM, so to speak, with documentation and insights and about the old system to support designing the new system, for example?
So to help you design a new system with the support of AI, definitely nowadays, if you give it enough context, it will give pretty good ideas. I don't think it will make the best decision for you, but at least it can give you a couple of ideas for how to create a final architecture. So what we normally do in these cases, if we need some ideas that, we have a plan from our own point of view, we use it as a sparring partner to see, hey, what other things can an LLM or AI come up with to, maybe help us close some gaps or give us some new ideas around how we can do certain architectural decisions or where we can change up what we normally do.
Right.
So yeah, we do use it for basically a support for us.
Right. Clear. And so, like, a last question in terms of a prediction from your end on where I think software modernization is like a very big industry in a sense, like replacing legacy systems, like legacy enterprise systems, and it's growing as like more and more of these software products that have been built in the past need to be replaced somehow, and the technology goes quite fast also. So what do you have like any predictions in a sense of what is similar to maybe the CEO of Microsoft that says, okay, the AI agents are going to take over a lot of like the business rules, so to speak. There's only like a database and a visualization layer, and the rest is the AI agent. Do you believe in that kind of thing, or do you have other ideas on where this is going with the legacy systems and the replacements of these?
So if we are talking about the replacing legacy systems by AI supported systems, or where we think we should go, or where it would take us, it is actually pretty unclear as of yet, because the main problem with AI or LLMs nowadays is the amount of context they can have, and especially with legacy databases, it's a lot of data that is, what I said, inconsistent or not complete, or the context is not as clear cut. Legacy databases are normally very distributed around across a lot of different database or tables or rows. There's no modernization that has been applied to this data. So that is also very difficult for the LLM to interpret. So I see it can always be a helping hand there, but taking over the work so we don't, for example, have to do the integrations anymore, that we don't have to do the translations to a modernized architecture. I think we're still quite far away from that because of the nature of the AI supported systems right now is based around text. And if you have text that is missing some parts, it can fill it in. But if you have data, it tries to infer from the other data what should be there. But for a database, and especially for legacy systems, that doesn't make the most sense because a statistical probability of what would be there is normally not good enough for a system to be used.
Clear. Thanks, Kishan, for your time.
Sure thing.
Okay, nice. That was it.